The day my own son chose her over me. My name is Thomas, and I am 65 years old. I've lived long enough to see winters come and go, to bury friends, to forgive people who never apologized, and to learn that sometimes the deepest wounds aren't caused by strangers. They're caused by your own blood. The morning my life turned upside down didn't begin with shouting. It began with silence. The kind of silence that sits heavy on your chest when you wake up and already know something is wrong, but you don't yet know what. I was sitting alone at my small kitchen table, the same table my late wife, Margaret, used to place 2 cups of tea on every morning. Now there was only 1 cup. Mine. The steam curled into the cold air of the room, and for a moment I let myself pretend she was still here, about to walk in and scold me for skipping breakfast again. The knock on the door snapped me back to reality. It was sharp, impatient. I opened the door to see my son Daniel standing there. Behind him stood his fiancée, Olivia, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her eyes weren't kind. They were calculating, as if she was already measuring what in my small, quiet home could be turned into money. "Dad," Daniel said, forcing a smile, "we need to talk." Those words, "we need to talk," are never harmless. I stepped aside and let them in. Olivia didn't even look around. She walked straight to the living room and sat down like she owned the place. Daniel hovered near the door, avoiding my eyes. "We're getting married in 3 months," Olivia said flatly. No warmth, no joy, no excitement, just a statement. "And you're going to pay for it." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I thought I had misheard her. "I'm sorry," I said. She leaned forward, her lips curling into a thin smile. "You're retired, you have savings. Daniel is your only son, it's your responsibility." Responsibility. That word echoed in my head. I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to correct her. To say, "No, Dad, we didn't mean it like that." But he said nothing. My heart sank. "Son," I said quietly, "your mother and I worked our whole lives. That money is for my medical care, for my survival. I'm not a rich man." Olivia rolled her eyes. "Then sell something, downsize. Old people don't need much anyway." Old people. I felt something crack inside me. I had worked in the same factory for 38 years. My back ached every morning. My hands were stiff with arthritis. I had buried my wife with the money I saved penny by penny. And now, standing in my own living room, I was being told that my life had become an inconvenience. "I won't pay," I said firmly. The room went cold. Olivia stood up so suddenly that the chair scraped loudly across the floor. "You'll regret this," she snapped. Then she turned to Daniel. "If your father doesn't want to support us, we'll make him." Daniel finally looked at me. His eyes were conflicted, but he didn't defend me. That was the moment I realized I was standing alone. 3 days later, I received a letter from the court. She had sued me. Not for abuse. Not for harm. But because I refused to pay for their wedding. I sat on my bed holding that legal notice, my hands trembling. I wasn't angry yet, I was broken. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. Where did I fail as a father? That night I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, remembering Daniel as a little boy, how he used to fall asleep on my chest while I watched late-night news, how he cried when his mother died and promised he'd take care of me when I grew old. Promises are easy when you're young. Life teaches you how easily they're forgotten. The court date loomed closer. Friends told me to settle, to just pay something to avoid humiliation. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about money anymore. This was about dignity. And I was about to walk into a courtroom, not just to defend my savings, but to defend my worth as a human being, the courtroom where I stood alone. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cold stone. I had never imagined I would walk into a place like that, not as a criminal, not as a victim, but as a father being sued by his own son's fiancée. My hands trembled as I passed through the metal detector. The guard barely looked at me. To him, I was just another old man with tired eyes. But to me, this was the place where my dignity would either be taken from me or defended. I sat on the wooden bench outside the courtroom, clutching a folder filled with bank statements, medical bills, and the deed to my small house. Each paper told a story of a life lived carefully, frugally, responsibly. a life that was now being treated as a wallet. Across the hall, Olivia stood in a bright dress that looked more suited for a party than a courtroom. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she paced, whispering to her lawyer. Daniel stood beside her, silent as ever. He didn't look at me. That hurt more than any insult she had thrown at me. When the doors opened, my chest tightened. We filed into the courtroom. The judge, a woman with tired but sharp eyes, took her seat. The room fell silent. Case of Olivia Carter versus Thomas Carter, the clerk announced. Hearing my own name spoken like that, like I was some kind of opponent, made my stomach turn. Olivia's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, he began smoothly, my client and her fiancé are preparing for their wedding. Mr. Thomas Carter, the father of the groom, has sufficient savings and assets. It is customary in many families for parents to contribute. His refusal has caused emotional distress and financial hardship to the young couple. Customary. Emotional distress. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but my throat was tight. The judge turned to me. Mr. Carter, do you have legal representation? I shook my head. No, Your Honor, I can't afford a lawyer. Olivia smirked. The judge's expression softened slightly. Then you may speak for yourself. I stood up slowly, my knees ached. The courtroom felt too big, too bright. I cleared my throat. Your Honor, I said, my voice trembling at first, I am 65 years old. I worked my whole life in a factory. My wife passed away 6 years ago. My savings are for my medical needs and for surviving my old age. I love my son, but I cannot afford a wedding that costs more than my yearly income. Olivia's lawyer interrupted. Isn't it true that you own your home outright, Mr. Carter? Yes, I said, it's the only home I have. And wouldn't selling or mortgaging that home provide enough funds for your son's wedding? The words hit me like a slap. The judge raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting this man make himself homeless to fund a wedding? Olivia's lawyer hesitated. We are suggesting sacrifice, Your Honor, for family. Sacrifice? I had sacrificed my youth in a factory. I had sacrificed sleep to care for my wife when she was ill. I had sacrificed comfort to give my son an education. But apparently none of that counted. The judge turned to Daniel. Mr. Carter, do you agree with your fiancé's claim? For the first time, Daniel spoke. I think my dad could help more, he said quietly. It felt like a knife slid between my ribs. The courtroom murmured, the judge frowned. Help more, she repeated. Do you understand what you're asking of him? Daniel looked down. We just want the wedding we deserve. Deserve? I wanted to shout. I wanted to ask him where he learned that love comes with a price tag. Instead, I spoke calmly. Your Honor, I said, I am not refusing because I don't love my son. I am refusing because I cannot destroy my future to decorate one day of theirs. Silence fell over the room. The judge leaned back, studying Olivia now. Ms. Carter, she said, why is it necessary for this wedding to be so expensive? Olivia lifted her chin. Because this is my dream. I've waited my whole life for this day. If he loved his son, he would make it happen. That was the moment I realized something. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about family. This was about control. The judge called for a short recess. As everyone stood, Olivia brushed past me and whispered, You're going to lose, old men always do. I didn't reply. But for the first time since this nightmare began, something inside me hardened. I wasn't just fighting for my money anymore. I was fighting for the right to grow old with dignity, the truth no one expected. The courtroom doors closed again, and everyone returned to their seats. The short recess had done nothing to calm my nerves, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just afraid anymore. I was steady, like a tree that has been bent by storms so many times it no longer snaps easily. The judge cleared her throat. Before we continue, she said, I will allow any additional witnesses to be called. Olivia's lawyer rose first. Your Honor, we would like to call Mr. Daniel Carter. Daniel's name echoed in my ears. My son stood and walked to the front. His steps were slow, heavy, as if each one carried the weight of the choices he'd made. Daniel, the lawyer began, Do you rely financially on your father? Daniel swallowed. No. Has your father ever promised to pay for your wedding? Daniel hesitated. I looked at him not with anger, with tired eyes, the kind that ask a child, why are you doing this? No, Daniel finally said, he never promised. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Olivia shot him a sharp look. The lawyer pressed on. Then on what basis do you believe he is obligated to pay? Daniel's voice wavered. Olivia said that parents are supposed to help, that it's tradition. Tradition is not law, the judge interjected calmly. Olivia's face tightened. Then something unexpected happened. The courtroom door opened again. A woman stepped inside, mid-40s, neat coat, nervous eyes. The clerk looked confused. Your Honor, the woman said softly, I asked to speak. I believe I have information relevant to this case. The judge nodded. State your name. My name is Rebecca Miles. I work at the bridal planning agency Ms. Carter hired. Olivia's eyes widened. Rebecca continued. Ms. Carter came to our office and requested an event far beyond what her fiancé could afford. When we discussed budgets, she said, and I quote, his father has money. Old people always do. We'll get it out of him one way or another. The room went dead silent. I felt my chest tighten, not with pain, but with a strange, heavy relief. The truth had finally found its voice. Olivia jumped to her feet. That's a lie. Rebecca shook her head. We have emails and recorded consultation notes. She made it clear the wedding was about status, not family. The judge requested the evidence. Papers were handed forward. The judge read quietly for a long moment. When she looked up, her eyes were no longer neutral. Ms. Carter, she said, do you deny making these statements? Olivia opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Yes, she said finally. So what? People say things when they're stressed. The judge's voice was firm now. This court does not exist to enforce someone's dream at the expense of another person's survival. Daniel stared at Olivia. His face was pale. You said my dad was being selfish, he whispered. You said he was rich. Olivia snapped back. Because you told me he had savings. Don't act innocent now. The judge raised her gavel slightly. Enough. Then she turned to me. Mr. Carter, she said gently, I'm sorry you were brought into this courtroom. No parent should have to defend their right to keep their dignity. I felt tears sting my eyes. I hadn't cried in public since my wife's funeral. Daniel stepped forward. Dad, he said, his voice breaking, I didn't know she said those things. I thought this was normal. I'm sorry. I looked at my son. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to shake him. I wanted to tell him that love doesn't grow in soil watered with greed. Instead, I said quietly, I didn't raise you to sue your own father. He bowed his head. The judge cleared her throat. I will make my ruling shortly, she said, but let me be clear, this case should never have reached this courtroom. As the judge left the bench to deliberate, I realized something important. Sometimes truth doesn't just protect you from losing money. It protects you from losing yourself. The courtroom felt smaller while we waited. Every tick of the clock sounded louder than the last. My hands rested on my cane, knuckles pale. I wasn't afraid of losing money anymore. I was afraid of losing my son forever. That fear sat heavier than any legal threat. When the judge returned, everyone stood. She took her seat, opened the file, and looked directly at Olivia. Ms. Carter, she began, this court finds no legal basis to compel Mr. Thomas Carter to fund your wedding. Parents are not financial instruments. They are human beings with rights, needs, and limits. My breath caught in my throat. The claim is dismissed, she continued. Furthermore, this court strongly discourages the misuse of legal systems to coerce elderly individuals. Such actions border on exploitation. The gavel struck once. Just like that, the nightmare ended. Olivia's face drained of color. For a moment, she looked like a child who had finally been told no for the first time in her life. Then anger replaced the shock. This is ridiculous, she hissed under her breath. We'll find another way. The judge's eyes flicked to her. I sincerely hope you find a better way to build a marriage than starting it with entitlement. That line landed like thunder. Outside the courtroom, the hallway buzzed with quiet chatter. Reporters weren't there. No cameras, no applause, just the echo of footsteps and the soft hum of a building that had seen thousands of lives pass through it. Daniel stood beside me, awkward and small. "Dad," he said, "can we talk?" I nodded. We walked outside together. The sun was bright, almost blinding after the dim courtroom. For a moment, we stood in silence. "I didn't realize how far things had gone," Daniel said. "I let myself believe I was entitled to your sacrifices. I forgot you're not just my father, you're a man with your own fears." I looked at him, really looked at him. The boy I raised was still there, buried under pressure, pride, and the wrong influence. "I love you," I said, "but love doesn't mean I disappear so you can have more." He nodded, tears welling. "I know, and I think I need to rethink this marriage." Olivia stood at a distance, scrolling angrily on her phone. She didn't look at us once. "Whatever you choose," I told my son, "choose a life where no one has to be crushed for someone else to shine." Daniel took a deep breath and walked toward Olivia, not to comfort her, but to speak the hard truths he'd been avoiding. I didn't hear the words, but I saw the body language change, raised voices, shaking heads. Finally, he turned back to me alone. She left without saying goodbye. That day I went home to my small house. I made myself tea at the same kitchen table. The silence was still there, but it was lighter now. It didn't feel like abandonment, it felt like peace. I placed my wife's photo back on the shelf and whispered, "I stood up for myself today." Later that evening, Daniel called. "Dad," he said, "I'm sorry it took a courtroom for me to remember who you are to me." I smiled for the first time in weeks. Final moral, strong in viral style. Love is not measured by how much you give up, it's measured by how much respect you receive. If someone's dream requires you to ruin your future, that dream is built on selfishness, not love. And sometimes, the bravest thing a parent can do is say no.